Ladies and gentlemen, one final call. Could I now please ask everybody to take their seats? We'd like to begin the presentation. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, good afternoon. And welcome everybody to, I have to take a deep breath at this point, the South East Coast Ambulance Service NHS Foundation Trust Annual Members Meeting. So I'm Graham Colbert. I've been the interim chair since April of this year, and I'm just going to introduce the proceedings today. It's lovely to see so many people here, and I hope you've enjoyed looking at the stands and the vehicles on display. I want to preempt one of the questions for later. There is no truth in the rumour that the white Bedford van is going to be added to the fleet. So that's good news. So a big thank you to all our trust members, staff, volunteers, Retirement Association for manning the stands. I think you've done a fantastic job. Particularly thanks to all the local groups, including the Alzheimer's Association, British Heart Foundation, Surrey Blood Bikes, and Surrey Minority Ethnic Forum for coming today as well. It's really great that you're here. I'd also like to extend a special welcome to our patients and local patient participation group members, representatives from our commissioners, and representatives from other key local stakeholder organisations. And also a warm welcome to David Cooley, Councillor David Cooley and his wife Pam, who are here today. Thanks very much for coming. So anyway, I'd like to start with some housekeeping. So you'll see over here that we've got speech-to-text typing. So anybody who needs that, if you just want to make sure you can see it, we'll make some space over in this corner so that you can get the most out of the presentation. So if you need that, it's over there. Toilets, hopefully if you've needed those, you find those. Those are at the back, just outside the room. In the unlikely event of a fire, we're not expecting anything, we just make our way out there and mingle with the vehicles on the Eclipse lawn. So the whole of the annual members meeting is being live streamed to our YouTube channel. So if you don't want to be a YouTube sensation, if you could just make yourself known to a member of our staff, and we will see what we can do about that. We're delighted if anybody here is not a member of the Trust, would like to become so. Please feel free to sign up at the Get Involved stall after the presentations have been complete. It's totally free. Many benefits, including the opportunity to stand for governor in our elections. And we've got some elections coming up next year in a number of areas. And it's a great opportunity to, if you fancy volunteering. We're looking forward to answer the questions that you've already submitted in the Q&A session in a minute. We'll also hopefully have time to take any questions from the floor. So as the presentations proceed, if there's anything that strikes you want to ask, you'll have the opportunity. As I said at the beginning, I've been interim chair of the Trust since April of this year, having taken over from Richard Foster. And our thanks go to Richard for all the work he did during the period of the annual report. So I've been a non-exec director since 2012, and I stand down at the end of September after 2 terms with the Trust. And I'd just like to thank the Council of Governors, Board, and executive team for putting up with me over the last 6 years. SECAmb is a fantastic organisation, doing great work, and it's been a privilege to serve on the board. I'm delighted that David Astley has been appointed as chair with effect from the 25th of September. David brings with him a wealth of experience from 37 years in the NHS, amongst many other roles. David's previously worked as Chief Exec of St George's Healthcare NHS Trust in South West London and East Kent University Hospitals NHS Trust, so he's got some good knowledge of the region. Most recently, he's been a non-exec director at Liverpool, so less relevant to the region, and he's independent chair of the Cambridge and Peterborough SDP. So David's already spending time in the Trust, and we look forward to him chairing the next board meeting later in the month. Before I hand over to Chief Executive Darren Mockery, we're going to show a short video. We're delighted that this patient has chosen to share their experience, as it's a fantastic example of the skills and care our staff and volunteers deliver 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year.
What can I say? From now on, or from there on, we've been looking at ambulances in an even different way. I mean, we've always known that they are important, but the fact that they save Yinka's life, essentially. So from my perspective, we are just really grateful.
Main thing is waking up on the floor, seeing all these feet around me, rushing around, screaming, call an ambulance, and then just waiting for the ambulance. When they came, of course, cut me out of my jacket, and then put the brace around my neck, and then hoisted me up into the ambulance, and took me straight to St. George Tooting.
So this job was one of my first jobs on my first car shift. When I first got the job, it was really confusing because where it happened, we weren't really expecting much until we saw how high he had actually fallen. It was, I think it was like 7 or 8 meters. He was in good spirits at that point. He thought everything was going to be okay, which really lucky it turned out to be.
No, at that stage I couldn't feel a thing. It was quite surreal, just being able to only feel from the neck up. Couldn't move a thing, and it was more of a feeling of giving up than any kind of fear or anything. I was just, in a weird sense, just very tired and done for the day.
So this job, I was basically out just to give support to Amanda because it was her first SRV shift. I was just there to sort of reassure her, really. I had no huge intervention, rather than sort of just talking to the patient. I let Amanda do the sort of clinical stuff. Made sure we got a crew going, and then we actually travelled with the patient in the ambulance to St George's, where Amanda did a fantastic trauma call and handover. And that's my lasting sort of memory of the job, just how good she was for her first shift.
We found Gordon and Amanda and Alua on the floor in a sort of, like a sort of half a circle, wasn't he? We immobilised a lot of people who potentially aren't as badly injured as Alua was. So it was very important that we did that right on that occasion. We did it a lot at that time. We had a lot of pressure on to get it absolutely right. And I remember I was driving for that job, so the drive into hospital, obviously in these, is quite bumpy. So I was very aware not to sort of hit any big holes or swerve around traffic too quickly, yeah.
In A&E, they took an X-ray, and they showed me the X-ray, and they looked very bad at that point, and that's when it kind of sunk in at how devastated the damage was. In a sense, the C5 was smashed to pieces, and there were just shards, and the C6 had snapped in half, and pretty much pressing it up against the spinal cord. And they were very adamant that if they don't operate now, I would die.
When we saw him where he was with the potential injuries that he had, I don't think any of us thought that Oliver would be up and walking around as well as he is at the moment. It's brilliant.
Yeah, like, once I made my mind up to walk, there was nothing gonna stop me in that sense. It wasn't easy getting there. Like, you're dealing with a lot of different people, a lot of different ideologies, and the way people see things compared to how you see things. But I'd like to say I proved them all right, in that I said 3 months, and I did it. So now it's just upwards and onwards.
It's absolutely amazing to be able to see, you know, the patient at the end of the phone in real life, and I think it's just great just seeing him like this. He's just, yeah, he's an amazing guy.
With our job, it's not going to the big jobs like this. It's, you know, old people on the floor or people who are maybe using 999 inappropriately. So to do a job like this and see the end result, the whole picture, has been really rewarding, yeah.
And it was really nice that he reached out and tried to include us in his recovery. And yeah, it's the first time I've ever seen a patient post-hospital, I guess.
It was important just because they were the first line, and I feel like a lot of the time they don't get the appreciation they need and the thanks, like a proper thanks, not just you're doing good. So it was really good today to just meet everyone, because in the end, they saved my life.
Good afternoon. Just before we start, people often ask me why I joined the ambulance service 27 years ago and why I do this job, and that's exactly why I do this job. That's exactly why I joined the ambulance service 27 years ago. And whether you work as a chief executive, whether you work as a call handler, a volunteer or a clinician on the ambulances that we see outside there today, it takes a team to save a life. And I think we should always remember that one individual cannot do it on their own, whether that's me as the chief executive or control room staff or staff on the road. It takes a whole team to save a life, and I think that video absolutely demonstrates that today. So well done to all the staff involved in that, and I wish the patient all the very best in his recovery. I'd like to welcome you here today, as the chairman says, to our annual members meeting. I have the pleasure today of presenting the significant progress I think that this trust has made over the last 12 months, looking at what we've achieved over the last 12 months, but more importantly, looking forward to what we're going to achieve in the next 12 months and the years ahead. And I better just remember my clicker, which is over here. So just a little bit of a recap in terms of who we are and what we do. So as colleagues will remember, we became a foundation trust back in 2006 with the merger of the three legacy trusts, Kent, Surrey and Sussex. And in 2011, we became a foundation trust. We service the whole of the region in terms of North East Hampshire, Kent, Surrey and Sussex. And that's a population of about 5 million, over 3,500 square miles. And again, people say to me, that's a big geography we've got here. And I often kid them on by saying, certainly not as big as what I used to have to deal with in Scotland, which I think was 30,000 square miles. But it's still big in terms of ambulance terms as well. We respond to 999 calls from members of the public, and we also run the 111 service across the whole of the region as well. I'm delighted to be able to report this year that we've been able to, over the last 12 months, recruit a full and substantive executive team for the first time in a number of years within the trust. And I'm absolutely delighted about that. And that's why I think we're now starting to absolutely make the progress that we're starting to make now. And the team, and I think most of them are here today and you can meet them later on, are absolutely experienced in their own right in terms of a lot of NHS experience, whether that be nursing or in the ambulance sector, or indeed some non-NHS experience coming into the organisation as well, in terms of Ed, and you heard from Ed earlier on in terms of some of the stuff he's been doing around the organisation at the Council of Governors meeting. And I think that's brilliant that we can bring that additional expertise into the organisation, and we will continue to absolutely drive this organisation forward and do what we can to support our staff and patients going forward. The area is quite a large area and complex as well, and one of the challenges that we have, but it's also an opportunity as well, is how do we interact and engage with the 22 clinical commissioning groups, the large number of acute mental health and other trusts that we have across the region, as well as the charity Air Ambulance and all of our blue light partners and local authorities. And one of the things that I've absolutely been trying to do over the last 18 months or so since I've been here is make sure that we build those relationships and work with those partners to make sure that we are absolutely seen as a real system player and a real system solution to a lot of the challenges that the NHS and social care faces across the region. And I think that is one of the strengths that's now being realised across the patch, and that we are being seen as a real system solution and a system player to some of the challenges. In terms of our structure, and you might not see that from there, but essentially if you drew a red line down the middle, we're now structured into an east and a west region. That's constructed around 10 operating units, and within the 10 operating units we have a number of make-ready ambulance stations and other ambulance stations. But as well as that, we've got our two 999 emergency operations centres, one in Coxheath and one in Crawley, and we've got our 111 operations centres as well, one in Ashford and a subcontracted one in Dorking. And we've got our two hazardous area response teams, and for those of you who have been outside, you'll see some of the vehicles that they now have at their disposal. So we have a hazardous area response team across in Ashford, covering the east and we've also got a hazardous area response team covering the Crawley and the Gatwick area as well. Our staff do an absolutely fantastic job, as I've already said when I was talking about that video, and I genuinely mean that. You know, I often see some of the, or a lot of the negative stuff that goes on across the organisation, just given the role that I've got. But when you put that into perspective about the work that we do day in, day out, more often than not, we absolutely do get it right. So we've got about 3,500 staff across the organisation, the majority of whom work on the front line. But as I said at the beginning, just because you work on the front line doesn't mean to say that you're not contributing in some way to saving lives and improving the outcomes for patients across the region. And one of the interesting stats when I was looking at this morning is that you'll see from this that a lot of the staff now are under 30. 32% of our staff are under 30, and a high proportion of our staff, 54% now, are under 5 years of service, which tells me that there is something happening across not just the ambulance sector, but the whole of the health and social care sector around. People are more mobile now in terms of moving around different organisations, and we need to then do more about how do we continue to attract staff to remain within SECAmb, how do we make it attractive to do that, and how do we also attract staff to come in and join SECAmb with the different operating models that we need to think about going forward. And we can't forget our volunteers. Our volunteers do an absolutely fantastic job as well, supporting us day in and day out. Whether that's our community first responders, whether that's our chaplains or our governors, or other volunteers who help support us around Inclusion and Advisory Hub. We've got a huge number of volunteers that support this organisation, and one of the things I'm absolutely determined that we do is that we continue to build and develop our volunteers going forward. And I know that this year has been a little bit challenging in doing that for a variety of reasons that I'll probably come on to later on, but I absolutely do value the role of our volunteers and recognise that we absolutely do need to do more to support them, because there is much more our volunteers could actually be doing for this organisation, and more importantly for our patients. Again, it was another very busy year for the Trust. Not just the Trust, but the whole of the health and social care system, particularly over winter last year. Demand was up, whether that be in the 999 service or whether that be in our 111 service. So again, another very busy and challenging year, and this year will be no different. And we've already started significant planning in terms of our winter. But when you think about that, and you think about some of the stuff that we did do last year, one of the big changes that happened last year was the ambulance response programme. So we were one of the last ambulance trusts back in November to go live with our ambulance response programme. And the ambulance response programme was about how do ambulance trusts triage patients better, and how do ambulance trusts send the right resource to the right patient first time, and not necessarily just any old resource, because that's what was happening in the past. And the frustration from staff was that they were being sent to calls, stood down, sent to calls, stood down. And also they were getting to calls maybe in 8 minutes, 1 second and saving the patient's life, but that was seen as a failure because we hadn't got there within time standards. So this was about how can we have clinical outcomes and response time standards, but send the right patient to, send the right vehicle, to the right patient first time. So we went live, as I say, on the 22nd of November. Huge amount of training for our control room staff in operating differently. And I'm pleased to say that out of the 4 categories that we now have in England in terms of responses, so category 1 being the most seriously ill or injured patients, which is about 5% of our workload. Category 2, which is not so serious but still ill, so heart attacks, chest pain, stroke, which is about 45% of our workload. And in category 3 and 4, which makes up about another 50% of the workload, which is more elderly fallers, low acuity, minor injury type patients. In terms of category 1 and 2, we are doing really, really well in this trust. So if you're sick in this region, you are getting a fast response, which is absolutely fantastic, because that's why we all do what we do. However, where we need to do better, and we understand that, is our category 3 and 4 patients, because some of those patients are waiting too long for an ambulance. And we've been doing a huge amount of work to put additional resources in place by recruiting new staff and vehicles, but we've also been working really closely with our commissioners, and we've secured some additional funding last year to put some additional resources in over winter. And I'm hoping that over the next few weeks we will be able to make public a huge amount of work we've been doing with the commissioners around an additional investment in this trust over the next 3 years that will allow us to achieve our response time standards and improve the care that we provide to our patients. As I say, we cannot forget clinical performance, because it's not just about the speed of response. I know that Fiona Moore, the medical director, and colleagues have been working really hard to look at how do we improve on areas such as stroke, out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, major trauma, and Fiona's appointed a couple of new consultant paramedics more recently to see how we can absolutely continue to drive forward more improvement in clinical outcomes. So for me, finance, clinical outcomes, operational response time performance all go hand in glove, and that's absolutely our focus going forward. And in terms of the money for last year, we did well in terms of finances for last year, which was a significant turnaround from the previous year, because for those of you who were here last year, I think the Trust ended up about 7 million overspent. And we were probably at risk of going into financial special measures from our regulators, NHS Improvement. But I'm really pleased to say that David and his team have done an absolutely fantastic job, and we'll hear more from David in a minute about making sure that we've got the right governance systems and processes in place, but that we're still continuing to invest in frontline services and patient care. And we achieved not just a £15 million cost improvement programme, but we also hit all our financial control totals and ended up with a small surplus. And we finished the year off with well over 13,000 members as part of the organisation, down slightly from the previous year. So sign up if you've seen the leaflets at the back. But nevertheless, still fantastic that we've got so many members across the organisation. It's not been easy. No, it never will be. It never will be easy. We know it's not easy out there just now in terms of the public sector. So we have had a number of challenges, not too dissimilar to other ambulance trusts or other NHS organisations. So recruitment and selection absolutely is one of our key priorities. We are embarking on trying to get another 200 odd staff in before Christmas if we can. But we now need to make sure we've got a real robust recruitment and selection and workforce plan going forward to train and get more staff in over the next three years. We've been challenged, as I said, a little bit there around category 3 and 4 performance. I make no secret about that. And we've also been challenged a little bit about our 999 call answering standards too. There was a huge amount of change within this organisation and their EOCs that the staff have absolutely responded to. Whether that's been putting in a new command and control platform, new control rooms, a whole variety of different things. So we have had some challenges there, but we've got an improvement trajectory. We're absolutely improving where we need to be, and we will continue improving where we need to be around the 999 call answering. I've already talked about our leadership team, and we'll be doing more around our whole senior management leadership within the organisation as well. One of the disappointing things for me last year, having not long started, was the publication of the CQC report clearly, which meant the Trust remained inadequate and in special measures. We've just had the CQC in over the last few weeks, and we are optimistic that we will have a better rating this year. We can never second guess, we just don't know, but certainly the early indications from the CQC are that they have seen significant improvements over the last year, but they still say we have got some work still to do. So we very much recognise that. And we want to absolutely do much more around building a more attractive, inclusive workforce within the organisation, and how do we support and look after our staff more. Because again, we recognise that if we can look after our staff more, they will absolutely look after patients better, and that's why we're all here. Pace has been a challenge for the organisation, but I genuinely think, and I know it's on your tape, on your seats, but when you look at, I think, the review of the year and what the Trust has achieved in the last 12 months, could we have gone much quicker? I don't know if we could have, to be honest, because we have done a huge amount in that 12 months. Perhaps if we'd had a full leadership team in place a year and a half ago when I started, we might have been able to go a bit quicker, but I think we've gone pretty quick in the grand scheme of things. And we still know that there's a challenge across the whole system, whether that be handover delays in hospitals or other issues like that. And we had an ageing fleet, not as old as that vehicle that's white out in the car park there, thankfully, but we have had a challenge around vehicles. We know that. We didn't have a fleet replacement programme, we didn't have a plan in place, but I'm delighted to say that David, Joe and others along the operations and finance team have brought in, I think we're planning to bring about 135 new vehicles in this year, which again is fantastic because we hadn't for the last few years, which was such a shame. But again, a huge amount of achievements across this organisation, as I say. I think for me it was topped off when the Countess of Wessex came to open up our control room in Crawley and our headquarters there. I think that was a fantastic day for the staff who came out in force. The sun was shining, and the Countess of Wessex spent a long time listening into calls, speaking to our staff and really engaging with the organisation, which was great. In terms of response time performance, I've already said that we have improved the response time to those sickest patients. We safely moved 2 operations centres into 1 at Crawley. You know, that doesn't happen by accident. That happens through a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication from people, a lot of professionalism from people, a lot of planning from people. And you know, it's not the first time that Ambulance Trust have had challenges moving massive changes like that, or making massive changes like that, and we did it relatively seamlessly. On the back of that, we were putting in a new command and control dispatch system as well. So the staff in the EOC had, you know, moving buildings, new command and control system, all the training on the back of the new ambulance response programme, and really did rise to the challenge. I've mentioned fleet, I've mentioned handover delays, I've mentioned the turnover of staff, but one of the things we did do, and Angela and the team are doing a fantastic job, and they're at the back in terms of the stands, is our new wellbeing hub. So we've now got the wellbeing hub where staff can access different services, whether that be mental health services, whether that be health promotion, fast-track physio. So we've now got an ability to be able to start looking after our staff better than we could in the past. And we want to continue working with our partners, looking at how do we explore new ways of working, how do we work around new pathways, and we have opened up lots of new patient pathways across the region, but what I want to do more of is how do we open up many more pathways to allow our staff to be able to safely keep patients out of hospital. And frontline staff all now have their iPads, and on their iPads they have clinical guidelines. In the future, we hope that those will also have a new clinical a patient record as well going forward. So there's been lots and lots of things happening in the Trust that's really positive over the last 12 months or so. And looking forwards, I touched upon it earlier on, we absolutely now need to sign off the demand and capacity review, which will right-size the organisation for the future, very much in line with our strategy around using specialists more, whether that be paramedic practitioners, whether that be critical care practitioners, whether that be using other multidisciplinary members of the healthcare team as part of the organisation in order for us to do more hear and treat. So not taking patients to hospital by sending an ambulance, more see and treat. So if we do send an ambulance, we keep more patients in the community safely, and we have more pathways to refer patients to. And how do we also make sure that we link into other strategies across the wider health and social care system, whether that's through sustainability and transformation partnerships, STPs, or whether that be through other health and social care organisations. So very much about right-sizing the organisation for the future. As I say, the CQC will report. They will probably report round about the end of October. And as I say, hopefully we will have a better rating when that reports at the end of October. I've already touched upon culture and the work that we absolutely want to do around our volunteers. So that was just a very quick canter through a lot of work that's been undertaken over the last 12 months in the organisation. I genuinely believe that we have made significant progress. I hope that comes across today. I hope that comes across in the literature that's sitting on your seats. I hope that comes across when you go out and speak to patients and interact with other members of the team. So we're not going to take any questions now. I think we're going to take them later on, but I would just like to finish off by thanking every single one of our staff and volunteers across the Trust for everything you do day in, day out for patients across the South East region. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Hammond, Executive Director of Finance and Corporate Services. Thank you for inviting me here today to present the financial statements. I think it's fair to say, and we all know, that financial performance for this organisation absolutely and correctly takes a back seat to our primary purpose of delivering the best patient care that we can to the best possible standard that we can deliver it. At the same time, however, I think we also have to acknowledge that without building a solid base which is sustainable for the future, we will really struggle to deliver the services ongoing to those right levels. So as Darren said, these things go hand in hand. I think we've, as Darren said also, we've been on a journey where the finances are concerned. To remind the members' meeting, we were £7.1 million in surplus at the end of 2016-17. I think we approached that by taking a two-pronged approach to things. Firstly, we looked at our income. We looked at the amount of money that we were getting from our commissioners to provide the services that we did. We have 22 CCGs which we work with within the SECAmb patch. And both SECAmb and our commissioners made some very, very, very difficult decisions in terms of increasing the revenue that we were able to generate in 2017-18. I think the second thing we looked at was we looked internally at ourselves. We absolutely collectively identified areas of waste, duplication and inefficiency. And we took quite severe measures to eradicate them as quickly as we could. And I think the key underlying principle of doing that was to make sure that we could put every pound that we possibly could into frontline patient care through the operations team. So whether that's in EOC or via the staff on the road in the ambulances, through our volunteers and other people who can provide that patient care. So it wasn't very easy. It's nice to stand up here, to be able to look at the improvement, to come back with a small surplus, effectively, to break even. So we spend what we're given, particularly from a position of deficit. But I wouldn't like to say that was an easy task, and that's not something that's just driven by finance. Whilst the control system and the skills of the finance team to do some accounting are important, actually it's delivered by every single one of our staff who took the challenge forward. The response to the pleas from me in terms of the Finance Matters newsletters I used to send out asking for new saving schemes, identifying areas of waste and inefficiency was absolutely superb. And as a result, you can see that we managed to increase our income with increasing levels of activity, but whilst also keeping our cost base as it was in the previous year. And that's a testament to everybody within the organisation to really taking the challenge. As Darren alluded to, we were very, very close to going into financial special measures. We were very, very close perhaps to losing some autonomy and some control of our own organisation and it being given to somebody else because they, at the time, perhaps certainly from the 16-17 deficits, didn't think we were capable of dealing with it. So I think it's an absolutely fantastic achievement for the organisation to turn it around in the way that we have. So that then sort of leads me to, so what's next? So we've done it, we turned it around, we can present a really nice set of numbers for 17-18 compared to the previous year, but that's not enough. We now need to make ourselves a sustainable organisation built on the right infrastructure to be able to move forward. So I think for me, it neatly breaks down into sort of three areas, if you like, and those areas are our people, in terms of our staff, our processes, and our technology and infrastructure. And if we can continue to invest in those areas, I think we're building a really solid base on which to provide our patient care. So, as you can see from the slides, in 2017 we started this journey. We invested a huge amount of money. As Darren said, we brought in over 100 vehicles. We replaced the computer-aided dispatch system, which is the heartbeat of delivering the 999 service. Without that, and without its integration into the crews on the front line, we would never be able to deliver a service. We've started a project to replace our telephony system to make sure that we have the best telephony system, so when we receive those calls, we can triage and manage them in the right way. And we've improved and invested in our estate. As corporate services, one of my portfolios includes the estate, and there's a clear acknowledgement that we have a very differentiated estate. We have some fantastic make-ready centres. The facilities are as good as any of the facilities in any of the ambulance services in the country. Unfortunately, that hasn't been rolled out across the entirety of the patch yet. So equally, whilst we have some outstanding facilities, we also have some fairly old, not fit for purpose in the current environment we have to work in stations. So we will continue to invest in those. In the meantime, whilst we're looking at developing a make-ready infrastructure for the entirety of SECAmb, we will continue to invest in the backlog maintenance and just making these older sites as nice and as good as we can for the staff, because Obviously, their base is so important. And I think the final thing I wanted to mention, as Darren touched on, is that we've continued to work with our commissioners. So in the numbers I showed you for 17-18, we increased the income for the year. We've worked with commissioners on a demand and capacity review, which looks at the amount of resource, whether that be people, vehicles, etc., to deliver the service that we need to deliver for our patients in this patch. Again, it's been a really, really tough piece of work, but I think the engagement from our partners and the engagement from the staff within SECAmb to getting us to a point now where we can have a longer-term funding settlement that will allow us to invest in infrastructure, including and staff, is a really, really important place to be and puts us in a very, very good place for the future. So I think my statutory duty for today is to ask the governors and the members to receive the accounts. And I'd just like to say on a personal basis, thank you very much for listening to me. There's been a huge amount of collective effort to be able to share some really positive finance numbers, which hasn't always been the case in SECAmb. So I'd just like to say thank you very much to everyone who's been involved.
Good afternoon. What a real pleasure it is to see so many people in the room today. My name is James Crawley. I'm one of the elected governors for Kent, and I'm also my second term as lead governor. This afternoon it's my privilege to speak to you on behalf of the whole Council of Governors. The Council of Governors' primary role is to be a critical friend to the Trust. We appoint the chair, the non-executive directors, and we hold them to account for the performance of the board. And we play a very active role in helping the Trust with strategic planning, initiatives to assist the Trust in developing the highest standards of care to people accessing our services, and importantly, to the staff that are providing those services. Last year, during this very speech, I said, we do not underestimate the challenges ahead, but with the leadership now in place, we have every opportunity to meet the demands placed upon the Trust and to excel. I'm pleased to tell you that we've seen very significant progress in nearly all the areas of the Trust where our own staff and external agencies had identified issues. Having seen and been involved in the numerous changes in the executive team at board level, governors are increasingly heartened at the calibre and ethos of those executive directors. At the financial year end in April, the executive team was almost substantively complete, and with the appointment of the medical director just after year end and the substantive chair appointment that's just happened, we're close to achieving stability in the board. The governors led the recruitment process for the new chair, and we're very keen to welcome David Astley. I'd also like to take the chance to thank Graham Colbert and Tim Howe for their work as interim chair and deputy over the past few months. There have been some very welcome additional non-executive or NED appointments, bringing much needed organisational development, IT and clinical skills to the board, which should be very helpful with the work still ahead. The NEDs as a governing body seem to be working more effectively, and the revamped board committee structure highlights the areas of risk to the board more clearly and in a timely fashion. Governors have observed many of these committee meetings. Council meetings themselves are becoming more effective in discussions with the NEDs, and the governors are finding that our questions to trust managers between meetings are receiving much fuller and frank responses. This bodes well for the general direction of travel. During 2017-18, we were very pleased with the CQC's appraisal of the 111 service as good, and proud of the 999 staff who also achieved a CQC good rating for caring for our patients, our primary function. The numerous areas of serious deficit identified by the CQC last year were very much in the systems and processes put in place by the previous leadership of the Trust. As we've heard from Darren, the recent follow-up inspection seems likely to recognise many of the improvements that have been made, whilst acknowledging there will still always be work to do, though of course we haven't received the final report yet. It's great to hear that the inspectors were welcomed and were treated openly and honestly by the staff. Governors seek robust structures to protect patients and empower staff to deliver the best possible service. It's on these areas that the Council puts its focus at our meetings and our interactions with the Trust. The Trust remains challenged in a number of areas, not least operational performance. And whilst this is an issue nationally, governors will not stop seeking improvements for our locality. The introduction of the ambulance response programme appears to have helped us to get to the sickest people more quickly. But governors have been and will continue to be vocal in insisting on the importance of understanding the experience of all our patients, especially those that wait the longest for our resource. This also includes sometimes people that experience long waits for their 999 calls to be answered. The Trust has been finding it hard to recruit for some roles. However, the new HR Director appears to be getting to grips with this challenge quickly, and we are almost at complement in many areas, including critically our Emergency Operations Centre. Governors have been involved, particularly the staff governors, in work to improve the culture of the organisation and remove the everyday blockages that staff experience that prevent SECAmb from being a more decent place to work. One area the Trust is still failing to provide leadership and is subsequently losing productivity is with our fantastic volunteers. Whilst volunteer governors and chaplains are pretty well supported, our hundreds of volunteer community first responders are not well managed or supported, a situation identified and highlighted by the governors on numerous occasions over the years. This waste of dedicated resource, who often have the ability to assist those patients waitest the longest for our service, is wholly unacceptable and must be rectified as a priority by the Executive. Volunteers must never be a replacement for paid staff, but used as an enhancement to make the role of paid staff a little easier, and crucially, provide an important first response to patients until an ambulance crew gets to the scene. In cash-strapped times, the Trust must look to alternative methods of building extra capacity into the system. The number of active CFRs has dwindled from over 600 to less than 300 in just a few years, and governors look to the entire Executive and HR Director to address these issues urgently, in conjunction with the operations teams. And we have asked NEDS to focus on getting assurance that this work is moving apace. We have been pleased to note that there are signs of investment in this area, whilst it's still early days, and there is also the nationally recognised Investing in Volunteers programme, on which SECAmb is the national ambulance lead. This should shine light formally on areas for improvement. We'll continue to scrutinise developments in this area, as we feel investment in volunteers will have a significant impact on patients' outcomes. It's pleasing to see the investment in cultural improvement work across the Trust and the acknowledgement that this cannot be imposed on the organisation but must be owned and embodied by all staff. We are seeing green shoots of improvement. Financial challenges cannot be ignored, and there's been some significant investment not undertaken this year. For example, much needed improvements to premises, whilst other investments in our new HQ and Emergency Operations Centre and new improved CAD system for 999 have brought massive benefits. The governors are pleased to see that the Trust now has a fleet replacement strategy in place and is starting to replace older vehicles with more modern, efficient and fit-for-purpose units. This is important as our staff need access to the best possible equipment to be able to provide the continuing excellent levels of patient care safely. We all know that the NHS is strapped for cash, and it's vital we make the right choices when we spend taxpayers' money. We also need to work together better across the health and social care system to remove the disincentives to work together when it can improve things for our patients and our finances. Some governors are very much involved in the emerging sustainability and transformation partnerships and are keeping a weather eye on their progress to ensure they are both effective and accountable to the public. We are very pleased to hear about innovations including leading on healthcare system-wide projects to improve hospital handover times and the embedding of midwives, for example, in our EOCs to provide support. Governors are also investing time in building links with other foundation trusts in our areas of operations in the hope of assisting system-wide transformation of care. There seems to be an increasing recognition that governors raise important issues that should be listened to and acted upon. The type of SECAmb where the governors are listened to and respected will be the type of SECAmb where patients and staff receive the same basic courtesy and ultimately good service and experience. This is the SECAmb we all strive for and that the South East deserves. And the Council will continue to support and challenge, as a team, also strive for this under Darren's leadership. There have been a number of changes to the Council this year, and I thank those that have left during the year and welcome those that have joined. We have a large number of Council seats up for election in the new year, and I'd encourage our members to consider standing for election. Please talk to any governor here about the role, or contact the Trust for information, or visit the Get Involved stand at the back. All members will receive more info through the membership newsletter in due course. It's a demanding role, 2 to 3 days per month, but very rewarding. Finally, I'd also like to thank all my fellow governors for their hard work over the year and recognise the efforts of Darren and his team, the rest of the board, SECAmb's 999, 111 and non-operational staff, and all our volunteers. I sincerely hope their efforts continue to bear fruit, and I know we in the Council will continue to do our best to represent the interests of the public and all external stakeholders. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Giles Adams. I'm Head of Compliance. What an amazing turnout. I'm really impressed. So, Head of Compliance, what does that mean? In a nutshell, I have the privileged position to have oversight of a lot of our improvement journey. So, how we will improve our ambulance service. And as we've seen before, as Darren's highlighted, as David's highlighted, the numbers are incredible. You know, nearly 750,000 emergency calls. The amount of money is quite considerable. How on earth do we have time to improve the quality while we're constantly trying to achieve performance in a very challenging environment? So I come from a paramedic background. I joined the service over 22 years ago. I started on patient transport, and I've seen the service change over the years and the demands increase. But one thing that I have striven for over that time is to ensure that our quality is where it needs to be, the quality that your ambulance service absolutely has to provide for you. So, improving your ambulance service, what have we done? Huge amounts of work in the last year, in the last 2 years, but we've talked about building the strong teams. We've talked about the investment in our fleet, which was very much needed. One of the areas I'll talk about, the technology to enable an increase in our appraisals. So all of our staff now have iPads. We have a system to enable us to do appraisals on a regular basis, which have gone up to 92% of staff receiving an appraisal in the last year, which is a huge increase from 35%. And I think that's what the value of talking and listening to our staff brings us. It can't be underestimated and it can't be taken for granted. The people out there providing the service on the front line probably usually know the answers. They certainly know where we're getting it wrong, and we have to be better at listening to them. So that's some of the stuff that we're really focusing on. And we know culturally we've got a journey to take. We haven't always got it right. We've heard about in the past where we've absolutely got it wrong. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about our new values. And what's really important in these is they're not Darren's values. They're not my values. They are SECAmb's values. SECAmb people, SECAmb staff looked at those values and decided, actually, what are the most important ones? Really big thank you to Louis Parsons. You can tell, he designed these icons for the values. I think they're fantastic. And a quote from Louis was around why they're so relevant. He said, the way we improve our culture going forward is in the hands of all of our people. And every one of those values shows that. So I think that's really, really important. So too many things that we've done in the last year to really cover properly, I've got 10 minutes, so it's absolutely a whistle-stop tour through it. But a few highlights here. So handover delays, we heard a little bit about. Really challenging part, and the way we work with our partners, the way we liaise with our acute trusts has seen us reduce handover delays by 17%. Now, that's coming down now, looking like a level it was 2 years ago, which is unheard of in ambulance trusts. I talked to my national colleagues, they're not seeing it. It's seen here because of the work we do in partnership with our colleagues. It really makes a difference. The Wellbeing Hub, we've heard a bit about as well, and I know Angela's here, and I think one of the things we hear, well, part of my role is to go round and I visit all areas and we do quality assurance visits. And staff say to us, we love the Wellbeing Hub, it gives us a point of contact to look after us, it feels like you care about us. And a lot of the focus is on producing the systems and the support for our people, our staff, so that they can provide the absolutely outstanding care that they always do to the public of the South East. I mean, when you look at the numbers, 750,000 emergency calls, and predominantly the people who are met by our fantastic colleagues in green and red are overwhelmed by how good it is, and we saw the video earlier, it's fantastic. We talked a bit about incident reporting. Now, the importance of reporting incidents is it means we've got an open and transparent organisation. The more we report, the more we can fend off problems in the future. To prevent serious accidents happening, serious problems happening, we encourage our staff to report incidents early, and the reporting of incidents has gone up considerably since last year, and so has the number that are low and no harm, and that's really important. So a few of the areas that we've really focused on, and some of these come out of CQC reports of the past, must-dos and should-dos. Those of us who work with the CQC and the work around that shiver at night, we go to sleep thinking about the CQC must-dos. But actually, they are just the people that point out some of the things that, you know, with a fresh set of eyes that maybe we walk past on a day-to-day basis. Medicines management, we had a warning notice last year, and that's significant. They were really concerned about our management of medicines. If you ask other ambulance trusts now and you ask the CQC now, we're probably a leader within ambulance trusts, almost an exemplar, but we know we've got lots to do. I'm not sure if Carol Ann's here today, I haven't seen her, but her work around medicines, she's relentless and absolutely driving up the quality of what we use, how we use it, the legality, the security, the safety, because what we need when we arrive at a patient's side, we need to know the drugs that we've got are the right drugs, the safe drugs, in date, and they are now, absolutely categorically, and that's a real difference. Processing complaints. Now, my view on complaints is they are one of the best ways for us to learn. So now, pretty much 100% of complaints receive a response, fully investigated, with outcomes, within 25 working days. That's not easy. That's testament to Louise and the team in the patient experience team and their focus on making sure that when we get it wrong, we own it, we face up to it, we learn from it. All of those complaints, if they were upheld or partially upheld, have learning. We learn from them. That's so important. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but infection prevention ready. I have to think carefully and get that right, because I'll get told off by AD if I get it wrong. It's a complete change in how infection prevention is looked at outside of a hospital. All the guidance everywhere is based on nice contained patients in a hospital setting, in a ward, nice and easy. not upside down in a car, not in a bedroom, not in the bath, none of those locations. So the work, the innovative work that Aid and his team have done to change how we think about infection prevention is to make sure our clinicians are ready to make it safe. And it's so good that the CQC, when they looked and went through it, said, you've got to write this up. This has got to be the standard outside of hospital. We want this in the HSJ. That's really good. That's about raising quality, challenging ourselves, not doing it just because we've always done it, but looking at a different solution. So what does this mean for our people and our patients? Sometimes some of the projects seem almost removed from frontline care. Now, I go and see and talk to staff all the time. I'm quite comfortable with what they're doing out there. They're amazing people. I never cease to be amazed. Every time I go to an ambulance station, a make-ready, a response bus, a hospital, that's where you'll find them a lot of the time, they recount stories of the amazing work that they're doing. They do it and they forever say to me, yeah, but it's just the job. It's not. It's not just the job. It's just, it's fantastic. But by working with our partners, the acute trusts, adult social care, mental health trusts, our volunteers, we are being seen as a central part of that care providing. We are being seen as potentially the solution to some of the bigger problems. We are part of that now, whereas we were once just transport. It's not that anymore. It's so far from that now. We're going into schools and teaching them how to do CPR. We're doing events where we encourage people to understand the importance of when and why to call us. You see loads of examples of when we save lives. What you don't see is often the examples of when we just support someone through a difficult situation, a moment in time. And for us, that might seem insignificant sometimes. For them, that might be the most memorable occasion of the last year, 5 years, 10 years, and it can be so simple. We talked about investment, and we talked about some of our estates not being maybe where we'd want them to be as far as quality goes. But having said that, we are now embarking on a programme where we know the estates are old, and I've spoken to staff and they've said, do you know what, I don't always want to come to work because it just feels a bit tatty. Through David's investment and through the estates team and through the work of the QI Hub, which is really important, and I'll mention that again in a minute, we've just made some small improvements, but they've really been welcome. Changing the environment that people arrive to work changes their attitude to how they go out and provide care. So we can't underestimate how just those small changes can improve outcomes in care. I mentioned the QI Hub, the Quality Improvement Hub. That's given us the ability to have the grip and the focus on all of these changes as they're going on, because actually we're wide and dispersed. Our OUs, our operating units are spread all about, and it can be quite isolating. I know I was an operating unit manager for quite some time, and sometimes you feel a bit isolated out there. What the QI Hub has done is create this central link that joins up all of the work that's done centrally and corporately to all the amazing stuff that our staff are doing on the road, and giving it some relevance and making it seem joined up. Lots of things still to do, and that's a small list. The list of things to do, there'll always be a good long list, and so there should be. So when it comes to quality, I like to I say complacency is the enemy of quality. As soon as we think we're good, if we sit back and let that happen, we'll go right back to square one. We will not let that happen. The change in SECAmb is that we will challenge ourselves. We will ask difficult questions. We will face up to our mistakes. We will learn from others. We will learn from ourselves, and we will share that. So we will drive up the quality. When we get to outstanding, I say when, because we will, that's when we've got to work the hardest. That's when it's going to be most difficult, but we'll keep doing that. So most of you probably have seen our vision, and it's, again, our vision as a trust, aspiring to be better today and even better tomorrow for our patients, our people and our patients. Now, I have been asked before, why is it our staff before the patients? Well, as an organisation, what we have to do is support our staff because they look after our public, our patients. So if we get that bit right, you're in safe hands because our staff are amazing. We just need to give them the support in the systems, as was said before, develop the systems to make it easier. So this is a journey that won't end. This will be ongoing. So I'm just going to pass you over to Nathan, who is going to talk to you a little bit about frequent callers.
Hello everybody, I'm Nathan Daxner. I'm the frequent caller lead for the Trust. It's a role I've had for just over a year. I've got about 5 minutes to give you a really brief overview of the frequent callers in the Trust and the work that we as a team do. We're a very small team of 3. There's myself, who has an overview of Kent, Surrey and Sussex. We've got 2 frequent caller practitioners, one that covers the East, so Kent, and one that covers Surrey, and we both share a bit of Sussex. The day-to-day management of frequent callers is led by a nominated operational team leader who's based on stations. They're the go-to link for our staff, and they feed up the chain to us to help with our patients. The term frequent caller often leads people to imagine patients calling 999 inappropriately. On the contrary, very few of our patients' call volume is actually vexatious. The vast majority of our patients have complex health and social care needs, which are often unmet. So they use the 999 service because they feel that they need help fast or that they can't access a usual care provider, whether that be their GP or mental health. As a team, we probably look after some of the most complex and vulnerable patients, so it's important that any action that we take or how we support our patients, we get it right first time. To be monitored by the team, you have to make 5 or more 999 calls in 1 month or 12 calls in 3 months, and that's a national criteria which is followed by every ambulance service in the UK. As a trust, we only monitor patients who call from residential addresses and those that call from public places. So importantly, as a trust, why do we identify and manage our frequent callers? Well, firstly, it's important that we signpost them to the most appropriate service. The 999 service, quite rightly, is for life-threatening emergencies, and a lot of our patients can be managed in the community and signposted to other healthcare professionals. It's essential for the Trust to fulfil its obligation to identify and safeguard our vulnerable adults. And of course, it releases our ambulances to attend those other patients who also require our services. Some very brief statistics for you. We have a poster at the back which has more on. But on average, we have 420 patients that meet that frequent caller criteria on a monthly basis. We have a 4-stage framework. So out of those 420, we have about 150 new patients each month that meet that criteria. Our frequent callers make on average 3,140 999 calls every month. So for me this year, that's a really key objective to see how we can safely reduce that number, because of course that volume of calls impacts on our 999 call takers, our emergency medical advisors, and importantly, directly correlates to our call answer performance. Our frequent callers account for 4% of our overall 999 activity. So as an example, in the year 16-17, we managed 21% of our frequent callers over the telephone, and in 17-18, that went up to 24% hear and treat. So in numbers terms, that was nearly 5,000 extra calls dealt with over the telephone, and during the same period, we sent 806 less ambulances to our frequent callers. So it means that they're being managed safely in the community or over the telephone by our clinicians. We have a 4-stage framework, and the 4-stage framework is about 16 weeks, but we've never managed a patient in 16 weeks because, quite rightly, they're complex, vulnerable patients. It's based on national practice guidelines, so lots of other trusts have it. It's led by our operational staff and by our frequent caller practitioners. It involves speaking to the patient's GP, primary care provider, conducting a home assessment to look at any unmet health and holistic care needs and referring them. And we work with external stakeholders such as GPs, A&E, mental health services, social services, Age UK, and lots of voluntary community services to assist our patients. And quite rightly, our frequent callers, and importantly, their family and friends, feel supported and managed, and at all times where they're communicated with. As in the case study for you, we have an elderly lady who made multiple calls to the ambulance and the police service on a daily basis. Her husband lived in respite, so bar having carers twice a day, she was otherwise socially isolated and quite rightly didn't want to leave her property. Her son was very supportive, but didn't live locally, so wasn't able to visit her much. And she would call our trust for mainly social-related calls, so wanting to know where her carers were, what was happening. She'd normally be confused and disorientated. So this graph here shows you a 3-month call volume, and we have a graph similar to this for all of our frequent callers. So this shows you December 17 to February 18, and this graph shows you 144 999 calls were made during that period, and 140 of those were managed over the telephone by our clinicians in our operation centres. So we only ended up sending 3 ambulances to this lady. Not that I like talking anything with a pound sign in front of it, because we're supposed to put our patients first, but from a financial perspective, there's 144 calls cost the trust and the local health economy just over £18,000, and that's for a 3-month period, and this is for one of our 420 frequent callers. As a team, we worked with her GP, the older adults mental health team, the dementia specialist, the police and her son, and had a professionals meeting, as we do with all of our frequent callers, to implement a strategy. And it was found that a care agency had blocked the patient's number from contacting them, both in and out of hours, because she frequently called them. It was agreed that we'd give the patient a dedicated number so she could call to get through to the care agency. We worked with the agency to create a whiteboard to put in her house, so they knew exactly, so the patient could see when the carers were due, what name of the carer was due to come, and this helped with her dementia and her confusion. The dementia team changed her medications and dosages, and she had a lifeline, and they agreed to do daily welfare calls. They would actively call her and check in on her and see how she is. And we worked with the police to create a joint consistent message. So when the patient called 999, both of our call takers would read the same script to her. So this shows you the graph from March to May, the 3 months after. The trust only received 12 999 calls, resulting in 1 ambulance. So importantly, it just shows that the patient and her family were very grateful for our help that they received, and the patient's now receiving the right help, being signposted to the right service, is less confused and disorientated when she calls, and this is just one example of the many patients we've successfully helped. Thank you for your time.
Right, so that's the end of our formal presentation part. We're now going to move to a Q&A section. So if our panelists could join the stage, you know who you are. Thank you very much. While they're doing that, if I could just ask you to think about the evaluation form, the dreaded evaluation form. We'd really, really appreciate you to fill this in. It helps us understand and plan the day so that next year we can make this event bigger, better, and more relevant. So if you can complete that, that'd be really good. Was that me? Maybe not. Good noise. Well, welcome to our shooting gallery. Ed, do you want to start the introduction just to introduce who you are and what your role in the trust is?
I'm Ed Griffin. I'm the Executive Director of HR and OD, and I've just come to the end of my first 6 months in the trust.
Good afternoon, I'm Fiona Moore, I'm Medical Director, and I qualify as one of those who is under 30, and I've only been in the Trust for less than a year. Thank you.
Hi, is that working? Hi, I'm Andy Cashman. I'm Regional Operations Manager for the West. I'm in the 1% bracket, so over 30 years. And you know you're getting old when you see yourself in a retirement photograph. So.
I'm Sue Barlow, I'm the Associate Director. Sorry, I'm Sue Barlow, I'm the Associate Director of Operations, and I'm responsible for the EOCs, the 999.
James Crawley, Public Governor for Kent and still the Lead Governor.
And Adam Mockery, Chief Executive.
Thanks very much. Right then, so I've got a number of questions and then we'll open it up to the floor. So the first question actually is to you, Andy. Is the Make Ready programme going to see any new sites added or extensions to places such as Medway? And there's a follow-on question that says, where sites are surplus, have you considered developing the site to maximise financial returns?
Okay.
So if you take the lead maybe, and if other people want to chip in.
Okay, so short answer, yes, in terms of Medway. We are looking at developing a Make Ready site at Medway. Clearly the Trust has developed a number of Make Ready sites over the last 10 years. There was a pause because clearly you have to reflect on what you've learned from building those sites, what we need to be doing, is it the right investment at the right time? So the decision's been made to move forward with the Make Ready programme, learning from those existing sites. And Medway is one of the first sites that we'll be looking to develop. We need to identify the right location for that and work with the relevant developers and planning committees. In terms of the part of that process, we'll be looking at our existing estate, not necessarily getting rid of it, but it's about making sure we're getting the best economic value. So where we can dispose of that site, we will do, but we need to make sure that operationally we can still operate in that area and it's a feasible to operate from that area with the estate we've got.
Okay, thank you very much. So Sue, for you, what could hospitals do to avoid long handover time, especially relating to Chertsey?
I think as you saw in both Darren and Giles' presentation, what we've seen this year is an excellent improvement in our hospital handovers. That's really come about from the work that we've actually done in collaboration. Yes, we do need to do more, and there are certain hospitals that we do need to see further improvement, but I think we're confident now we've actually built up a framework that is working. I think we're confident even through the winter. We may see some challenging times because activity does go up, but I think we're confident we'll see an improvement and that will actually continue to improve.
Do you want to just comment on the work that's going? I know you did in your presentation anyway, but...
Yeah, no, I think we've taken a slightly different approach, I think, in the Trust, haven't we, over the last year and a half, in that we have, rather than blaming others or others blaming us, we decided that we needed to work in partnership. So we brought in a senior manager, stroke director from a community trust to work within SECAmb, but more importantly for me, work across the whole of the region in terms of making sure that we could unblock some of the challenges that not only we had, but other parts of the system had, so we can improve handover delays. I think the key point for me that Sue made is that we need to absolutely continue this work, not be complacent, and continue it right throughout the winter and beyond, and working as a whole system to unblock some of these challenges.
Okay, thank you very much. So Ed, if you wouldn't mind taking the lead on this one, and then I think we'll maybe ask for a couple of comments from others on the panel. So SECAmb staff and volunteers are incredibly caring towards our patients. How can we make sure that staff receive the same quality of care and support from their colleagues?
Thanks, Graham. I think there are a couple of critical factors to that. So one is about our quality of day-to-day management and leadership in the organisation at all levels. I think it's really important that each of us in a management position recognises the impact that we have on the people around us, and in turn that impacts on the way that they treat others. So we've been doing a large amount of leadership training over the last 4 months. We're currently rolling out a programme of leadership training to our operational unit managers and our operational team leaders, and I think that's also a critical part. We've also been doing work to positively reinforce and recognise the appropriate behaviours that we want to encourage. And you may have seen before the meeting formally started, Fiona presented one of our values cubes to several colleagues to recognise their contribution around particular values and behaviours. And that's a really critical part of highlighting the kind of behaviours that will make a real difference to the sort of working environment.
So whether, Fiona, you have any additional things you'd like to add?
So, as was highlighted earlier, we have a young workforce and we have quite an inexperienced workforce. And I think supporting the new individuals who join the Trust is really important. One of the developments we've seen within EOC, which again was highlighted as being very much the heartbeat of the service, we had quite a high turnover within EOC, and it's a very stressful environment in which to work. We get a lot of calls, and some of the calls are quite challenging, and many of our call handlers are young and inexperienced. And to give them the opportunity to work in a supervised environment when they first qualified has been really helpful in maintaining them within the Trust. And we're also looking at how many people would want to come and work in the control room on a part-time basis, because that seems to be quite popular for people who work in a call centre environment. And then, of course, for our staff on the front line, we have a well-developed system of preceptorship for new paramedics and a really good educational package, both in terms of key skills for all our staff and the education for our specialist and advanced paramedics.
Thanks. And James, from a CFR point of view?
I think there is... the CFR community is generally more experienced, it's fair to say, and they generally have slightly more life experience. But I think we do need to look at investing in the training of their team leaders. The Trust has invested, and a number of CFRs are now what we call trim practitioners that can help a CFR that's attended a traumatic incident. But I think there's some work to be done on the day-to-day management, but I think that'll hopefully be done with the appointment of the new volunteers lead.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on, Darren. We're being asked to reduce the burden on acute hospitals and manage more patients closer to home. Is this different from what SECAmb is contracted to deliver? If so, how can we reconcile the two?
Is it different to what we're contracted to deliver? In some ways, yes, because I suppose what we're contracted or have been contracted to deliver in the past is for every call we go to, we get a price and we take a patient to hospital. Clearly, that's not the right model going forward, because we know that our staff in a number of cases are more than capable of safely keeping patients out of hospital through the advancement in the paramedic profession, as an example. We, as part of our strategy, absolutely want to make sure we are a key system leader and a key system player in that whole health and social care agenda, and providing the best possible care to our patients who often don't want to go to hospital. So by taking them to hospital is the wrong thing to do for them. So what we've very much been doing this year, despite the contract being constructed in the way it is working with our commissioners to come up with some additional investment so that we have been able to do things differently. Whether that's more clinicians in our emergency operations centre to do more hear and treat, and whether that's more that's how we'd use more, I suppose, the specialists that we do have within the organisation, whether that be critical care paramedics or paramedic practitioners. But what I absolutely want to do now, going forward with the demand and capacity review, is come up with a new contract that is the new way of doing things, which is the right-sized organisation with the right funding and with the right operating model that allows us to continue keeping patients out of a hospital safely. And that is very much not just our strategy, that is the whole NHS 5-year forward vision strategy, as well as probably most of the strategies across this region.
Okay, thank you very much. So Ed, how can the service better support staff who are single parents, especially when it comes to shift working?
Thanks, Graham. I think, as Fiona alluded to, we know that one of the things that can be more attractive for staff, particularly in our 999 call centres and 111, can be flexible shift patterns. And I think that there are several things that we probably need to do. One is where we are seeking to attract candidates to the Trust, we need to be really clear and open to different working patterns and to be clear about what people's expectations are. We also know that where we've offered jobs to people, we need to be flexible about how we provide appropriate training. So, for example, we're looking now at providing some evening-based training courses for staff, because actually for some, daytime long courses are just simply not possible. I think it's also about the way in which we schedule staff as well. So sometimes it's about the level of planning detail that can be provided that then allows for more flexible rostering of staff as well. And then I think alongside that, we need to make sure that we are training our managers and team leaders to be able to pay attention to the needs of team members, to set reasonable expectations, to pick up on when there are potential issues. And then I think also making sure that we do provide access for people, which we are doing, to things like our wellbeing hub, so where people are feeling particularly challenged, that doesn't have to be catastrophic for them. Actually, they're getting appropriate early support in the right way that they need it.
Thank you. So the final submitted question before we open it up to the roving mic. So it's probably Ed or Darren to answer. I've heard rumours of us closing commercial training. Is it true? If yes, is this a lost opportunity to generate funds and a missed opportunity for recruitment of staff and community first responders?
I can take that if you like, Graham. So I think commercial training, as in our ability to provide external training to individuals and organisations, could be an important opportunity for us in several ways. So as indicated, the potential to generate additional funds. But in doing that, we have to be sure that actually we're not taking resources away from other activities, and that in doing it, we are at least breaking even. I've seen in other organisations there's often a risk because you see the attraction of income. What you don't think enough about is actually how much it costs and what it stops you from doing because you're using resources to run those particular activities. I think it's also attractive in terms of if we are building the health response capability across the region in other groups and individuals. And as was said in the question, if it helps us to attract staff, I think that's also important. We also need to recognise that technology gives us other means of training and helping people to learn. So actually we've been very successful in some of the computer-based training that we've developed for our own staff, which we've then actually been able to sell to other ambulance trusts. But actually its primary purpose was to train our own staff. So actually any income we've made from that has been a real bonus. So I think it's something that we need to keep a really open mind about, but we also need to understand both the consequences, so the costs and the benefits of doing it.
Okay, thanks very much. So that was all we had from the submitted questions. I hope the answers have answered the questions sufficiently, but if they haven't, please feel free to come back again. So we've now got at least one roving mic. We have a question here. I think it's from Frank. So it'd be helpful up front if you could just say who you're going to submit the question to.
I'm Frank Northcott, a trust member. We've heard from Nathan about what is done with frequent callers regarding the patient, but he didn't say anything of what happens to the crews. Is history marking policy improved with the new CAD system so crews get the right information? Because some crews, by not being given the information, have paid a very high price.
Thanks, Sue.
I think you're quite right. With the introduction of the new CAD, what it has enabled us to do is to review the history marking, and we can be confident now that we are able to mark the crews where it to mark the premises where it is appropriate, because it's good to know from a crew's point of view, from a clinical perspective, if there's anything we need to alert them. And as you say, it's also around safety. But what we are doing further to develop that is we're also, with the new CAD, enabled to put on emergency markers. So there isn't always time to review that. Some markers need to go on now. and what the introduction of Cleric, which is our new computer-aided dispatch, enabled us to do is to put those on straight away. So I'm very confident now that we can actually advise our crews, but also advise the EOC staff to alert those crews to any warnings, be they clinical or be they from their own safety perspective. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Question from Robin. It's coming, yeah, here it is. Oh, lovely.
Hi there. Good afternoon, everybody. Robin Kenworthy. I've been involved in patient representation for some 20-odd years and done 2 stints as a public governor for SECAmb. Just to introduce myself, I already submitted a lengthy question and documentation concerning fleet issues, most of which has been answered in the presentation. But the issues that it did not touch on were green issues, vehicle emission, and use of plastics in all the full gamut of SECAmb. So perhaps we could have some comment on that. The second question is a Brexit one again. On the 19th of February, I think it is next, the Falsified Medicines Directive, FMD, created to prevent counterfeit medicines from entering the supply chain. This will require the introduction of scanning devices at all sorts of levels where medicines are handled, should I say, and it's also designed to pick up where a patient is suffering from the effects of a medicine perhaps obtained on the web from an unusual source that is a fake medicine and is suffering as a consequence. So perhaps we could have some comment on that. And once again, I must congratulate CFRs. Excuse me, Sarah in particular from Cranbrook. She appeared as if from nowhere in my time of need, even before anyone had dialed 999. I was checked over, and yes, I know December is the pantomime season, but I was doing an audition for Tin Man, or was it a publicity stunt in Cranbrook High Street wrapped in an alfoil sheet? Thank you once again to Sarah and all the other paramedics and CFRs who have provided services, particularly in the West Kent locality. Turning to the annual report, I've got 2 points.
Can we deal with the first couple of questions first, Robert?
Yes,
if you would,
yes.
That be helpful?
Yes.
So green credentials of our fleet. Andy, you look like you're going to answer that one. Well done.
I'll take a stab at the vehicle bit. I'm not so sure about the plastics. In terms of the vehicles, the current replacement programme is based on the existing emissions or fuel. So 101 plus the 30 additional vehicles we're buying, so 130 vehicles. But we have, over the last couple of years, been trialling some dual fuel, so electric and diesel vehicles. I think the issue really for us is about ensuring that they've got the range and performance and the reliability that we require to become operationally feasible. But clearly it's something we'll continue to look at, and I think the market, in fact I was only listening the other day to some conversations on the radio about the developments of battery and the extended range that these vehicles can offer. So I think it's certainly something that we'd look to do and we're going to need to do as the phasing out of diesel and other fossil fuels becomes closer. In terms of plastics, I'm afraid I'm not the person to ask.
We'll get you an answer in due course. If we go on to the situation around medicines, I mean, it's obviously a complicated area. Fiona, I don't know whether you just want to comment on where we are on that.
Yes, this is something that we've, I guess, only recently realised applied to ambulance services, and it's something that our chief pharmacist is focusing on, and indeed the medical directors nationally are meeting with the chief pharmacist next week to see how we can take this forward. Clearly, it will require some additional finances for the trust if we are required to scan medicines, but I think the upside is the opportunity to flag counterfeit medicines or those that have been obtained on the web and that may not be safe. Just, I think, increases the surveillance that we currently do through the yellow card system. So I think it's a positive for us, but it is something that we have to scope going forward.
Thank you. Final question, Robin?
Yeah, the final one. As to the annual report, I refer to page 140. And I quote, well, there's a big quote in there. In addition to improvements have been made, that paragraph down the bottom left-hand side. Quality and safety report, a newly established health and safety report. That's my particular interest, having been a health and safety officer myself. One of the things that has been mentioned in the presentation so far is a recognition of the need, shall we say, to get the ambience of the workplace right. One of the issues that was on the health and safety, SECAmb health and safety group for many years was workplace inspections. They were always in arrears. And so I formally asked, with the new group and the new development, has the question of the arrears of health and safety workplace inspections been resolved? And the final one is, it's another of my hobby horses. It's the Appendix A, actually, E22, page 132, and Appendix A, 244, 253. I know that Health Watch has been in existence now since the 2012 Act, and I have repeatedly pressured them, in Kent at any rate, to engage in the quality account and the opportunity to comment on the draft annual report. This year they have done so to some good extent, and I must thank them and any work that SECAmb has done to persuade this, because that is the main public forum for commenting on Trust annual reports. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Robin.
Okay, I'll pick up the question in relation to health and safety. So we have identified within the Trust that there needed to be more investment in our health and safety infrastructure, because when I started, I think we only had, 2 middle managers dealing with health and safety across the organisation, and I think that was a legacy issue. I see you nodding your head there, and I think that was the case. So what we have done more recently, and I'm pleased to actually be able to say today, that we now have a substantive head of health and safety in place, who I think is here today. There you go. And we've also now got a full team underneath the head of health and safety in relation to the middle management structure. And we've now got a comprehensive action plan that we'll be taking forward over the course of the next few months to make sure we're absolutely doing everything we need to be doing around health and safety.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Eva.
Hello, my name's Alex. With regard to the community first responders, in London they've trialled with smartphone applications an app called GoodSam. Is that something that SECAmb would consider?
Yes. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So yes, London has worked very closely with GoodSam, and we are working with them as well. We have the capacity to introduce it into Cleric. That will go live next month. And I see no reason why we shouldn't put all our staff onto GoodSam in the first instance. That would be our people in green and also our people in red. I think GoodSam has got enormous possibilities. We're working with KSS Air Ambulance Trust with a pilot a research project that they're doing, looking at streaming information from a mobile phone to see if that gives more information to the control room. And going forward, that could be very useful both in triaging the right resources to a patient and also potentially in the event of a multi-casualty situation.
Thank you very much. There's a lady at the back in the red. Thanks, Izzy. No. Okay. Any more for any more? Yes, thank you.
Hi, Paula Dooley. I'm a Surrey representative on the IHAG. One for Ed, sorry. Egg on your face. The quality objective for the Trust for the this year, last year, has been to make the workforce more representative of the communities that we serve. And of course, we acknowledge that is a very difficult one to do. I wonder if you could update us on progress to meeting that quality objective, please.
Okay, thank you, Paula. I think there are several different components to that. So there is an incredible piece of work, well, it's not one piece of work, multiple pieces of work that Azmina Chowdhury, who's our lead on inclusion, drives for us as a trust, as part of Angela's team. And Angela's at the back, and Azmina was here earlier, but I can't see where she is now. And I think there are several different factors that we have to consider. So one of those is about, from a staffing perspective, how well do we understand the communities from which we recruit? And if you look across the southeast region, there actually is quite significant diversity. And if you look at how different, say, an area like Thanet is from Guildford, there are some very significant differences. So actually we need to start right at the beginning by targeting our attraction approaches to finding candidates for our roles in a much, much more focused way. And part of the work that we're starting to shift is to have more localized recruitment campaigns. We also need to ensure that actually the selection processes that we use are fair and give everybody an equal opportunity of actually demonstrating their suitability for a role. That's also really important. We need to ensure that actually then through our education activities and our training activities that we are taking account of the different needs of the workforce that we're developing. And again, in part, we're looking at how do we localize that to make it easier for colleagues across our region to access in a way that's going to be sustainable for us. I think also then the work of the networks that we have is incredibly important. And again, this is an area of work that Azmina has led for us, I think, in a really impressive and impactful way. I attended last month the National Ambulance LGBT Network Conference in Manchester. So this was representation from all of the ambulance services in England and Wales and Scotland. And one of the things that was really striking for me, and I make no claim to this, as I say, I've only been here 6 months, so this has all been done by other people, was the role that SECAmb has played in actually getting that network established. And I think particularly some of the work that's been done to understand patient needs for patients in our region who may identify within the LGBT community. And I think very important to recognise that there's very clear data that shows people with certain different needs or identification are actually probably less able to access healthcare as effectively as others may be able to, and actually healthcare outcomes may not be as good. So actually our ability to have a workforce who are more representative and also better understanding and better equipped means that we should be able to provide better outcomes across the trust. I think it's also worth just saying at the conference last month, there were a small number of awards, new gold awards given out to people who have made a major contribution to the establishment of the network and its impact in ambulance service. There was something like 10 awards given. 4 of those went to staff from SECAmb. Angela, who's at the back there on the wellbeing stand, was one of those. Azmina was another. And I think that's a recognition of the impact that we've had. We have to clearly be careful that we're not complacent about that. I think we also have to be careful that we don't simply have one high-level objective, but we get more granular in terms of the detail of the specific outcomes that we would expect to see, whether that's in terms of equality of opportunity and for promotion, for example. I think one area where there is probably significant underrepresentation of a variety of groups is actually at senior management level. And I guess you only have to look across the table here to get a sense of that. And in some ways, as a white, middle-class, middle-aged male, I'm probably the wrong, or almost the worst person to be speaking about this. And I think that highlights the challenge for us. So I think it requires a real openness. And again, I think part of our cultural shift, so people are actually, one of our priorities is to create a culture that is inclusive, is actually ensuring that at all levels of the organisation and in all environments we provide the opportunity for people to contribute, regardless of who they are, to respect differences of all kinds, whether that's because people have different backgrounds, different experiences, or simply different ways of thinking. We need to challenge ourselves to be more open to that.
Thanks, Ed. Any final questions? Okay. Thank you very much for those. Thank you, panel, for your comprehensive answers. Great job. Thank you, yes. Yep. So we're now going to do the competition winner. I think, Darren, you have the honour of drawing the...
Yeah. Is it working?
Is that on?
Is that on? Yep, yeah. Great stuff. Okay, so the winner is Lisa James.
Where is she? Lisa, come and get your prize.
Another one? Pick another one? Okay.
She was just trying her luck, and she won.
Okay, I think, so the winner is Nikki Servage.
From the British Heart Foundation.
Is that right?
Still here? They still... Someone's got to win this prize. Seriously. Do see if they're outside. If not, we'll draw again. You're not in the room. Is that cruel? Okay. We'll see if we can track them down. We'll follow up.
Okay.
We'll
Great.
follow up. Cool.
Yeah,
Thank
cool.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you
Lovely.
very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we're now at the end of the meeting. Thank you very much to you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed the meeting. Please tell us if you did on the evaluation form. Please tell us if you didn't, if you've got some ideas about how we could improve the event. Please also write those down. I guess we'd quite like to pick the forms up on the way out, so please make sure your form's handed to one of our members of staff. Final thanks to me for everybody who's manned a stall, looked after the vehicles. Thank you very much for all your questions. But a special thank you needs to go to Katie Spendiff, who's essentially masterminded the occasion, and we have a little gift for her.
Okay, there we go. Can I just thank everybody that's come and continues to support the ambulance service, all of the staff for fully embracing the event every year and getting involved, all of our presenters and all of my lovely wider team who are here bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at 7 a.m. this morning to set this beautiful event up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And please make sure you have a safe trip home. Thanks very much.